The Liberals finally unveiled their long-awaited plan to confront China. This is the Great White North Report.
I'm in love with the system. Never going home. I'm in love.
All right, the Trudeau government has finally released its Indo-Pacific policy. This took like 7 years in the making, and it promises a bigger Canadian military footprint in the region, which is interesting considering that we don't have enough ships to do so, and we don't have the military personnel. But it describes China as an increasingly disruptive global power on the world stage, which is an understatement. A social economic force that's too big to ignore, but also increasingly focused on bending international rules to suit its own interests. It seems like Canadians have had a blind eye to China for 20 years. I've known this was going to happen. We should have left China alone and left it in the dark ages. So Canada needs to be clear-eyed about China's objectives in the Far East and elsewhere. It promised to spend almost $500 million over 5 years on improving military and intelligence cooperation with allies in the region. Well, we need to do something about our military, and we need to build a Pacific fleet fast, which means we should open up a fourth shipyard somewhere. So China is making large-scale investments to establish economic influence, diplomatic impact, offensive military capabilities, and advanced technologies. China is looking to shape the international order into a more permissive environment for interests and values that increasingly departs from ours. All you have to do is look at Coverx-Bavor, what happened there. Our foreign policy blueprint mirrors the approaches taken by its closest allies, including the United States, which released its own version. Where we differ from the States is how Canada document spells out that it will at all times unapologetically defend our national interest, and that its views will be shaped by the realistic and clear-eyed assessment of today's China. Really, Trudeau is more of a China lover than anyone else. But we really do need to defend our national interest because they've been thrown out the window over the past 2 decades. Many observers, including some prominent Liberals, have urged the government over the past years to maintain the pro-business investment relationship with Beijing that has built up over the last 2 years. That's a pipe dream. Those are the ones that want trade with China at any cost, and it has cost us dearly. Look at Nortel. Ask Coverx-Bavor what happened, as well as Canadian businesses that were struck hard. I prefer decoupling with China, myself. So it reflects the lessons of bruising international clashes that have driven relations between Canada and China into a deep freeze. It talks about Meng the Merciless and Coverx-Bavor, and even the lecture Chinese President Xi Jinping delivered to Trudeau. Trudeau should have told him to go stuff it right in his face. But Trudeau doesn't have the balls to do so. We will challenge China, including when it engages in coercive behavior, economic or otherwise, ignores human rights obligations, or undermines our national security interests and those of partners in the region. First of all, I'd throw the whole human rights things out of the way. It's not going to do any good. China's going to do what it wants. In fact, China's on the committee in the United Nations for human rights. So good luck there. We should be looking at national security interests and those of the partners in the region. So obviously Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, Taiwan, to a lesser extent Australia, and we should be looking to expand interests with Vietnam. So Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly described the overall plan as pragmatic and principled. Our approach is clear, we have a clear framework. Okay. National interest without compromising our values and principles. Well, we need to do something about that. We're going to use $2 billion in investments to, among other things, strengthen Canadian infrastructure, democracy, and Canadian citizens against foreign interference. Changes to the Investment Canada Act to prevent state-owned enterprises and other foreign entities that threaten Canada's national security from taking over critical Canadian industries and intellectual property. Simple, you ban the CCP, take down all their consulates, and leave just one embassy in Ottawa. Minimize their influence in the country itself. All federal departments are being told to review memorandums of understanding with China and other countries to ensure Canada's national interests are being protected. First of all, I'd get rid of the memorandums of understanding, the MOUs with China. Just scrap them all. Start over again. Say, well, we're not going to do this. Now we're going to uphold Canada's one-child policy when it comes to Taiwan. Well, first of all, I'd start shifting recognition away from China, from Beijing, and over to Taiwan as our one-China policy. Sends a clear message. The more belligerent Beijing gets, the more we start shifting to Taiwan. Canada will oppose unilateral actions that threaten the status quo in the Taiwan Strait. However, Defense Minister Anita Armandsky questioned about Canada's willingness to defend Taiwan, simply because we don't have anything to defend it with, as well as whether the government was concerned about a backlash from China due to Canada's increased presence. Well, I don't think China has to worry about that militarily, as we don't really have much. We sent most of it to Ukraine, what we can spare. But we will ensure the region remains one that is stable and will continue to grow economically. So if anything, financial aid and any military packages with what we can do. A little harder since Taiwan's an island and can be easily isolated. Jolly drew a direct line between Canada's involvement in the Pacific and another major focus of its foreign policy, the Arctic. She said closer ties with South Korea and Japan will support Canada's goal of maintaining sovereignty in the region in light of an increased interest from countries like China. Simple, we close it. Close our part of the Arctic off to China. Kick them out. Why not? They use their Coast Guard and Navy to belligerently block people from the South China Sea. We can do the same in the Arctic. So more Canadian men and women will be in the region to ensure peace, also uphold the rule of law. We need a more heavily armed patrol craft up there, unfortunately. Also contains a section on India, which includes a commitment to work towards a new trade agreement. So this has been a long time in the making. When they got first elected in 2015 to develop a new approach to China, after years of prickly relations under the former Conservative administration, Trudeau was hoping for a sunshine policy. He was hoping to reverse Harper's grumpiness towards China. Harper didn't really care about China that much. And Trudeau was hoping that his pretty face would woo the masses there. But it didn't impress anyone in the top leadership. And they've struggled in how to engage China and Xi Jinping. So Trudeau and the Liberals signaled a plan to increase Canada's military commitment to the region during the Prime Minister's recent overseas trip to the G20 summit. And they're going to boost engagement in international military exercise to increase the number of Canadian warships deployed in the region. That's why I've been thinking we should redeploy from the Atlantic to the Pacific as our main focus. Because Russia right now is kind of not doing so well in Ukraine and they're bogged down. So their Navy is going to suffer as a result from lack of funding. So we don't have to worry too much about that, and we should be shifting more of our warships to the Pacific now. We're going to help smaller countries in the region build up their military security forces with Canadian training. That we can do. Promise the Liberal government made in 2017 to increase the training and quality of United Nations peacekeepers, a promise that has gone unfulfilled. First of all, I pull out of the whole peacekeeping deal. It doesn't help us, it only gives us experience. That's the only thing I can think of it gives. Peacekeeping is expensive and costs our military. So all this boost in engagement militarily sounds great and all, but when you don't have the ships to do it, and we're not going to get our new frigates till 2030, and we're going to rely on our existing ones, maybe it's time to purchase a couple of frigates as a stopgap measure to help beef up our military. But we're also short of 10,000 members and struggling to recruit new ones. The way to fix that is simple. Increase the rate of pay. Make it more attractive. Up the pay scale across the board and give more benefits. Another way is that anyone with a criminal record, short of capital crimes, if they serve in the military, then their record will be expunged. Meaning that if they serve their full term, whatever that is, 5-year, 7-year, then their criminal record will be erased. I think that's a pretty good trade-off. That's one way we could do it. So we need to put our money where our mouth is. Well, where are we going to get the money for this? That's the biggest question, and cut foreign aid for the most part would be good. So China's embassy last Monday accused Canada of undermining peace and stability in the region, claims it is trying to meddle with China's internal affairs regarding Taiwan. Like China doesn't interfere in our internal affairs and trying to push into our Arctic area. So China's a hypocrite in that case. Can't stand for middle states, what it sees as a middle state, push up against it. It sees as nothing more than a tributary state. So this strategy was welcomed by the U.S. ambassador to Canada, statement last Sunday. So what I think it sounds great on paper, but can we actually do it? The fact that this took 7 years to formulate, because I think they were really optimistic at first, and then 2018 was a bad year with the whole Magnum Merciless Covering and Spavor, and China hitting our trade exports in pork, lobsters, and canola. It showed how China is willing to use economic warfare to get what it wants. Although it didn't in this case. But we need to definitely put more emphasis on our military. We need to build up in a lot of areas. Our Navy is the first one. Our Air Force would be second, then our land-based units. We need mobile rocket launchers, attack helicopters, more self-propelled artillery. We need heavier hardware, let's put it that way. Maybe it's time we build our own little island reef out in the South Pacific and claim it. And we definitely need to shut the door in the Arctic to the Chinese. Anyway, Canadians out there, let me know what you guys think about this strategy. Will it work? Can the Liberals put it together before the next election? Leave comments in the comment section. Until next time, this has been the Great White North Report.
I'm in love with the system.